From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
A couple of classics.
That was a major effort for him. Do the work that he didn't want to have to hand crank to start it.
Two farming dads show off their tractors and the history behind them. Why California's Proposition 12 could cause issues internationally. As deadly storms pack quite a punch across the South.
And I've never seen anything like this in 7 years.
The damage left behind right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Severe weather tore through the southern half of the country last week, leaving in its wake severe damage and devastation. The destruction impacting at least 7 states, including Texas, Florida, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And we begin in Arkansas, where multiple storms over the past few weeks brought much needed rain, but also heavy winds and crop damaging hail. The Arkansas Farm Bureau has an update from the northeastern part of the state.
I've been here 7 years as a county agent, and I've never seen anything like this in 7 years. But, you know, some of the corn around the county is not as bad, that it was just isolated. But this here, you can tell that it got damaged pretty bad. It kind of looks like shotgun. You know, somebody shot it with a shotgun.
We've had a round of storms come through here late last night that was kind of what we call training, different storms followed by a different one. Clay County here is probably one of the hardest hit. Greene County got their share of some damage, but the area we're in right now is probably the worst we've seen. I've been told of reports of hail damage in the river valley, and that's what we deal with in the early summer with these pop-up storms like that. You
know, obviously in 3 or 4, 5 more days you'll be able to tell a lot more, but after 10 days, this stuff will bush out and you won't be able to tell the difference of whether it got hail damage or not.
The ones that I've looked at today are corn, soybeans, and cotton, and I have heard of some rice also being affected. And it's primarily in vegetative state, so mostly, hopefully, it will be all right also. As you can see, the cotton, all 90+% of the leaves are gone. It's hard to evaluate for a few days what's going to happen. The buds, which obviously it's lost its apical dominance, which is your top bud. The lower buds will tend to bud out, take over, and the cotton will have more of a bushy type. Same thing with soybeans. We have a bushy type plant, but it can survive.
If everything's gone but your terminal, you're fine. And you won't be able to tell the difference of whether it got hail damage or not. So like this one, the growing point's completely busted off. So you might not get anything out of this one, but this plant here, it's still got a good growing point, so it can come out and still make it and be fine. They won't get as tall as they would have if they hadn't been hit with hail, but they will bush out and get big. And they'll probably, I mean, I'm not saying they'll have as high a chance of having as good a yields as they would have before, but they'll still do really well.
Even though it will bush out, it's still probably going to have an additional herbicide application to be considered in there if we keep it. And nobody knows how much delays, how much more insect pressure we'll have.
You know, there's some that's completely snapped over, like you can see here, and they've even got some of those out in the middle of the field, and those obviously aren't going to make anything, but there's not just a whole lot of that, thank goodness.
Unfortunately, these guys here have got some decisions to make. We've got enough, I've been around long enough to know that we've got enough experience that some of these crops come back and sometimes they go south. We have to watch them a few days to look and see, and hopefully most of these will survive, and the ones that don't, we'll replant to something else and try to get them a crop. But there's a lot of decisions to be made right now.
Hail didn't just fall down south. Weather-induced crop damage also finding its way to Indiana. A seed rep from Indiana sharing these photos. As you can see, hail shredding fields south of Fort Wayne, running from Bluffton southeast to Geneva, Indiana. The hail covering the ground in places with everything from pea to quarter-sized hail. Many of these fields are expected to be a complete loss. Further north in Howell, Michigan, a hailstorm caused significant damage to a Michigan State Police patrol car. Now, it's reported the stones were as big as golf balls. There are reports a possible tornado touched down in the area as well. A deadly tornado did touch down in the Texas Panhandle, bringing with it large hail as it moved through the town of Perrington, Texas. As many as 200 homes were destroyed, according to the town's fire chief. Now, some of those homes were leveled. The storm also sent up to 100 people in the area to the hospital with injuries. While in Florida, heavy rain caused flooding. This is Highway 98 after the rain. It's reported more than 17 inches have fallen around the Pensacola area. 2 tornadoes also touching down in the Florida Panhandle Thursday night. Hopefully a quieter week ahead weather-wise. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht has an update for us. Matt.
Yeah, just got done looking at some of that hail damage, and once we start to roll into the middle part of summer, hopefully getting some rain. The one thing, of course, we want to avoid is severe weather, whether it's hail, tornadoes, or strong winds. Now, I want to shift over to the temperature outlook, and what you're going to end up seeing are cooler than average temperatures for the East Coast, North Carolina, South Carolina, as a low pressure system continues to work across the United States. It's not a very big one, but the way it is shaped and the way it is rolling, it's going to bring some cooler than average temperatures to the southeast for an extended period of time. That's where we get back here on the left side of the legend, or into the blue. Otherwise, a big ridge jumping all the way up into parts of Canada will keep the heat around for a good portion of the nation. Again, that's June 23rd through June 29th. And as we were just talking about, there was some severe weather now over the weekend. We showed you earlier the crop damage in northeast Arkansas due to hail. Take a look and listen to the power of these storms. That's Clay Smith, who farms in that area of Arkansas. And you can see Clay's reaction to that uncomfortably close bolt of lightning and what it did to a tree. The good news is Clay was okay. Now, I'm going to have more on your forecast coming up. Amazing. In just a little bit.
California's Prop 12 law dictating animal husbandry practices for pork products sold in the state is now dealing with international concerns. Sonora, the second largest pork producing state in Mexico, raising its own concerns about Prop 12. It sells about 10,000 tons of pork to the U.S. annually, worth roughly $43 million. Now, it says production systems in Sonora don't match the new California requirements, adding that it's likely to impact sales. Meanwhile, governors in 11 U.S. states where about half of the nation's pork is raised are supporting new legislation in Washington, the EATS Act, or the Exposing Agricultural Trade Suppression Act, if passed, would override California's Proposition 12. Now, it's unclear whether the law can garner enough votes to pass. Ag giant Bayer continues to pay settlements for its Roundup weed killer. The latest, a $6.9 million settlement in New York over claims consumers were misled by advertising that said Roundup was environmentally safe. It's linked to statements that said Roundup, quote, won't harm anything but weeds, and, quote, does not pose a threat to the health of animal wildlife. And also some online videos suggesting Roundup was safer than detergent and soap. Now, the settlement requires Bayer to stop advertising the product as safe and non-toxic. The company, however, did not admit or deny any wrongdoing, adding that ultimately the Attorney General drew no scientific conclusions about Roundup in this case. Now, according to Reuters, as of February, about 109,000 of the 154,000 claims or lawsuits against Roundup had been settled or ruled ineligible. USDA announcing more loans and grants. This time it says the money will help ag producers and food businesses in 19 states across rural America. The investments totaled $320 million. The agency saying the money will help strengthen food supply chains and create more opportunities for producers and entrepreneurs. It's hoped the funding will also help make the food system more resilient and create opportunities for mid and small-sized operators. The funding comes from 4 programs: the Food Supply Chain Guarantee Loan Program, the Meat and Poultry Intermediary Lending Program, the Business and Industry Loan Guarantee Program, and the Rural Economic Development Loan and Grant Program. Soybeans ending the week back above $14. So how long can the rally last? Michelle Rook takes a look coming up in our analysis. And later, 2 dads, 2 tractors, and an effort to preserve history in the country. JBS says it has started construction on its first plant that will produce lab-grown meat. The meat packer saying it will be the world's largest lab-grown meat plant and is being constructed in Spain. Now, it expects the plant to produce more than 1,000 metric tons of cultivated beef each year when it's up and running. The operation will be through its subsidiary, Biotech Foods. The plant is expected to be completed by the middle of next year. Grain markets surged to end last week on growing weather concerns. Can the momentum continue? Michelle Rook asked that question in Markets Now.
Grains to the plus side last week, a big up week on a weather rally, and Brian Doherty with Total Farm Marketing is joining us. And Brian, like I said, big up week last week. We were up 67 cents on December corn, up $1.38 on November soybeans. If we continue to see hot, dry weather, how explosive could this thing get?
Yes, well, very. We can go back to 2012. We can go back to other drought years where percentage changes. We could argue we're just getting started, but we'll see what Monday brings. So the near term, let's say high that December corn might shoot for would be that 637. That was the October high. So if it breaches $6, expect additional short covering. I think one of the keys to how the market feels is how did it close on Friday? On Friday, we closed with a gain right toward the high end of the day. Very strong close, a lot of short covering, a lot of buyers putting kind of their money on the bet that this drier weather extends itself deep into next week or later. And you're starting to really see an earnest money flow out from shorts and money flow in from end users, from speculators who want to take advantage of this rally.
Yeah, and like you said, on Friday, we took out all kinds of overhead resistance areas on the charts. And so you talk about the projections. Is this an opportunity that needs to be sold here from a farmer perspective?
So there's a lot of farmers that we know are probably short on sales. Make sure you get that first 25, 35% of the crop sold on value. Now, the way I would approach this, because it is a weather market, is say, hey, look, we could go out and sell 20 or 30% here.
Right.
Probably a good idea, but probably a better idea to run a trigger point under the market, leave the top side open. If the trigger point's violated, be disciplined enough to sell. But put options are probably your best bet in this environment. Shore the flooring mechanism through the use of a put, and then allow the top side open. Weather could drive this thing a lot further than anybody expects.
All right, thanks for joining us. Brian Doherty with Total Farm Marketing. That's Markets Now, and we'll have more Ag Day coming up.
To discuss marketing strategies, call 800-334-9779.
I'm meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht. So a little bit ago, not only did we see some damage from hail, but also you also saw some lightning, severe weather, and active storm system. Not only this past weekend, but also last week. Things are going to shift to become a little bit more quieter. Now, a broad area of low pressure is going to work to the east coast, and that's what we're seeing with the wind gust forecast coming up later on this afternoon in the southeast. Again, this is Monday at 3 p.m. The wind will start to kick up with another piece of energy coming in down off of Canada. The problem is with a ridge of high pressure starting to build in over the Dakotas, the plains, a lot of the energy that would support much needed rainfall through the Midwest and also into the Dakotas and Minnesota is going to go more to the north. It is going to be a little breezy both through Bismarck and also into Nebraska, Kansas for our Monday afternoon and a little bit into our Monday night. Now we go back through this past weekend, the precipitation estimate coming in from some of the radars. You see that low pressure system tracked through the southeast and also resulted in some severe weather last week, including into Indiana, as we talked about just a little bit ago in the show, with some hail damage from some strong thunderstorms. That was last week. Going forward with that ridge of high pressure in place, it's going to be tough not only to get strong thunderstorms, which we don't want, but also just old-fashioned rainfall across the United States. So again, there's a look at the jet stream coming up for you Monday. That weak low pressure system will start to move off into the east, and you see the red really building in across the United States, which is going to keep a lot of the energy moving up and over rather than through. And the reason it's called the blocking pattern is for that reason. This is going to be blocking any kind of energy or even moisture coming up from the Gulf to provide some much needed rain. So that's kind of the roundabout way of saying expect 7 to 10 days where temperatures are going to be above average with pretty dry conditions. Again, there's that jet stream looking just into Tuesday. Let's head on over to Gillette. Sunny, high around 85 degrees, low of 56. Wildwood, mostly sunny, high around 75, low of 64 degrees. And what about New Mexico? High around 80 degrees, low of 48.
Coming up, Machinery Pete and the latest on the used combine market. And later, two classic tractors that are about much more than metal as we continue to celebrate Father's Day in the country.
Got equipment to sell privately but tired of scams and hassles? Visit MachineRepeat.com and click Sell Mine. MachineRepeat.com, the simple and secure way to buy and sell equipment online.
Could the tables be turning in the used combine market? Machinery Pete digs into the latest supply-demand numbers. Here's Pete.
All right, folks, we're going to talk Economics 101, supply and demand, and specifically as it pertains to the used combine market and auction pricing. Now, this chart is from the back end of our MachineRepeat.com website, supply and demand on used combines for sale. And now the thing about this chart is it goes back 2 years. So on the far left, that's 2 years ago, summer of 21. And if you look at that blue supply line tanking lower, of course, that's what we're seeing all over the country. Tightest used inventory levels ever with dealers. And you can see the blue supply line bottomed out fall of 22. And that's why we were seeing incredibly strong auction prices on combines. Now, at the end of 22, you can see that blue line starting to go higher, and it's continued higher yet here into summer of 23. And last December, I began to see just on the 1 to 3 year old combines softening auction prices. Now, a pair of auctions last Thursday I thought were pretty interesting. First, let's go Farm Retirement Auction East Central Wisconsin, where this 2022 Case IH 6150 with 179 SEP hours on it, so for $277,000. Now, for comparison, about a year ago, farm auction in Illinois, a 19 model 6150 with twice the hours, sold for $321,000. So again, the 1 to 3 year old models have softened up a little bit. But conversely, that same day, last Thursday, on a farm auction in Raymond, Iowa, the slightly older 2017 model John Deere S660, 589 SEP hours on it, sold for $235,000, highest auction price I've seen this year on a S660.
And that's not all from Machinery Pete. Up next, we're talking classic tractors and a couple of dads with quite a history lesson to share in the country.
In the Country on Ag Day is brought to you by Pivot Bio. What if you had the nitrogen you need already on seed? Pivot Bio is the first company to apply nitrogen on seed. The nitrogen you need, now on seed, from Pivot Bio. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Father's Day was this weekend, but who says the celebration had to all end on Sunday? Machinery Pete is back to talk with a couple of dads about their classic tractors. They are the father and father-in-law of Marcia Ruff of Circleville, Ohio. Now, Marcia was named the Executive Woman in Agriculture Trailblazer Award winner at this year's Top Producer Summit.
This is a John Deere LI. It belonged to a cousin of mine who got it in Phoenix, Arizona.
Moline Z, my father's second tractor. Bought it new, never been away from the farm. It had a barn and it was set up for 8 mules. That was a major effort for him. Do the work that he didn't want to have to hand crank to start it.
It originally came from Pickaway Township here in Pickaway County in Ohio. Chuck's dad actually operated this tractor mowing roads in Pickaway Township. He found it and it was out west. He got a hold of it. It was restored and he's had it in his possession for all these years.
Just general farm work. I'm sure raked hay with it. We had neglected it for a couple years and realized that wasn't right. So you see what it is now.
Chuck decided he's getting older and he wanted to give this tractor to me and my son Eric because he wanted someone that appreciated old iron and would take care of it. It's been well appreciated by this family and it would probably continue to be so. A lot of local growers, pumpkin growers, now compete to get the largest pumpkin. Then on Thursday night of the pumpkin show, they have a parade. My son, Eric Atwood, drove it through the parade.
What's it mean? Just knowing we've still got something nice out of the past, out of my father's past, I guess. Now it doesn't sit outside. My wife's van can sit outside, but not this.
It's important to me. It's part of my history. I've always loved tractors. I loved old iron. It's got family roots back to my family.
And our thanks to Machinery Pete and videographer Mike Byers for sharing that story with us. And we hope all of you dads out there had a great Father's Day weekend. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.